Hi everyone, this is James and I'd like to welcome you to this week's Oracle Outlook video reading. If this is your first time here, I'd like to say welcome. Thank you for taking time to stop by the channel and check out this video. And if you're a returning viewer and subscriber, I'd like to say thank you for circling back and thank you for taking that extra step to subscribe to the channel. It means the world to me that you would want to support the work that goes into the channel in that way. So I want to give some thanks to those of you who tuned into last week's video. The video, as I am recording this, hit the 100 view mark. And so for me, that is a bit of a milestone. Most of my videos don't get to 100 views. So when it does, I'm extremely grateful. So like I said, if you tuned in to last week's video, thank you so much for giving me the view. And the other thing that I would like to thank you all for is the uptick in subscribers. I said some time ago that when I got to 5,000 subscribers that I would do a live and I would feature my latest deck creation, the Mitchell Fortune Telling Oracle cards. And over the course of the last week or two, like I said, I've had an uptick in subscribers. So I'm getting closer to that milestone. So I want to just say hello to all the new subscribers and thank you for subscribing to the channel, as I said earlier. Okay, so now as you can see, we have one deck on the table, and once again I am working with tarot because I wanted to acknowledge again those of you who watched last week's video. I worked with tarot last week and I figured if it's not broke, don't fix it. But on a more serious note, I had an epiphany regarding tarot, and so I'd like to share it with you. But if you're not interested in hearing that, if you want to bypass this intro into this week's deck selection, I will be leaving a timestamp pinned in the comment section below. Okay, so now if you are still here and you want to hear the introduction to the deck choice, here it goes. So as I said last week when I came back to tarot, because I've been working with my fortune telling oracle deck and I still love it and I still love working with it and I still work with it on a daily basis, but I had a dream in which I felt like tarot was calling me back. I was being encouraged to pick the tarot back up again. So I did that last week and I've been doing it in my personal practice. Another thing I've been doing is I've gotten back into meditation on a consistent basis. And so during one of my more meditative moments, I was led to this particular deck to work with because of some of the thoughts and imagery I experienced while I was meditating. If you want to know more about that specifically, you can hit me up in the comment section below and I'll be more than happy to share it. But this deck is a Rider-Waite-Smith variant, and it is the Mahogany Tarot. This is by Kashira Hickson, and I will make a point to leave information about it in the description box below the video. But what I love about it is, like I said, a Rider-Waite-Smith variant, but all the people in the deck are melanated. And so I purchased this deck at a time where I was feeling representation in my tarot and oracle card decks was an important thing, and it still is important, but I hadn't been working with it once I made my own deck, and my own deck is a little more diverse in terms of people presented in the imagery. But like I said, I had a meditation or a meditative experience, and it called me back to this deck. So I figured since I've been working with it in my own personal practice, I would go ahead and work with it in this space. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a slight variation of the spread that I did last week, which is I pulled one card for every day of the week, starting Monday and working our way to Sunday, with the prompt for each card is, what can we possibly expect for this particular day? And like I said, each card in the spread represented one day. I'm going to do the same thing, only I'm also going to add a underlying theme card or influence card. So with that, let's go ahead and shuffle the cards and lay them out, and we'll get the reading started. Alright, the cards have been shuffled, cut, and dealt, and you can see the layout. So just like last week, we have the 7 cards forming an arc or a horseshoe. They're going to be the cards representing every day of the week. And so we're going to start from Monday. So this is going to be representing Monday, November the 10th, all the way to Sunday, November the 16th. And like I said, this card here is going to be the underlying theme because it's under the arch, the underlying theme or the underlying influence. And so we're going to start with that card first. So the theme or the influence card is, here we have the 2 of Pentacles. And so the 2 of Pentacles can show up when there is a shift in priorities. So for some people, there's going to be a shift in things that are important to you. So some things maybe in life that were not so important are going to become more important, and vice versa. Some other things that maybe were important for a time are going to get to the back burner. So there's going to be a shift in priorities. The other thing about this card, since it's from the suit of coins or pentacles, that represents things having to do with material matters or resources or assets. It could also have to do specifically with money or career or well-being, physical well-being, but well-being across the board even. So there may be issues for some people regarding one of those areas of life. Now for me, this is a card where it's asking for balance. The 2 is a number of balance. And as you can see, it looks like the juggler is doing a yo-yo kind of thing with the 2 coins. Yeah. So this card can represent juggling things, multitasking, trying to get some balance in your life. So that could be like work-life balance. For example, when it comes to money, this card can be about, money changing hands, or you're being encouraged to look at your budget. So this could be about the flow of money. This would be, the lemniscate is about circulation. So this is about paying attention to what comes in and what goes out. Maybe putting yourself on a budget or looking at a spending plan, things like that. But it could be about, getting your finances into a greater sense of balance. So again, this card is the underlying theme. Could be for the majority of people, it's about striking a balance in your material affairs. It could be specifically people who are looking at money in terms of spending, budgeting, things like that. It could also be that you are juggling a lot and you're multitasking, and maybe it's about, what are the things that you could be tending to that are high priority versus low priority, right? So since I talked about a budgeting plan or spending plan, you could literally be writing a to-do list with things that are high priority at the top of the list and things that are not so priority at the bottom of the list. So this way you could see yourself getting things accomplished. So that's what I would offer with the 2 of Pentacles. So again, that's the underlying theme or influence. So now this is going to be Monday, November the 10th. And the card we have here is the 8 of Pentacles. Okay, so now here we have another Pentacles card. So again, for Monday, possibly, we could expect maybe some focus and concentration on making money. The person sitting on the bench is literally in the process of chiseling out a pentacle, right? So this could be about making money, right? It could also be for some people maybe working with a technique or a process in which you're trying to quote unquote get things hammered out, or, hammering out the kinks, right? And you're having to do or go through the process repeatedly multiple times. So that is a possibility with this. It's also a card for me that can represent like internship. So this may be for some people taking up some kind of study, right? And with the idea that practice makes perfect. Yeah, so that's what I would say about this card. This card is about, again, the idea really here is about making money. What are you doing to make money? As I'm saying that again, for some people this could be about showcasing a talent or a skill or ability. And that would be all the pentacles lined up here in this column, right? So it's about putting something on display, and it may actually be something that is a physical, tangible, concrete product, right? Again, fitting with the energy of the coin suit or the pentacle suit being connected to the element of earth, right? So this could be something literal, tangible, physical, like a physical product, but it's about putting it on display, right, in an effort to make money. So that's what I would say with the Eight of Pentacles. That's for Monday. Tuesday, another Pentacles card. And we have, not only are all the cards Pentacles, but in the case of these two, we have sequential or consecutive order. This was 8, this is the 9 of Pentacles. Okay? So now, with the 9 of Pentacles, and this is for the person who may be working on creating their own thing or doing their own thing, because the 9 of Pentacles is a card that talks about either financial self-sufficiency or independence, or the possibility of a successful entrepreneurial or self-employment venture, right? So there is that to consider. It's like, and it's like upping your game, right? I'm looking at the 8. The 8 in numerology is a number that can represent the entrepreneur. It can represent business. It could represent career. The caveat with that, it's about organization, yeah? So it's about being organized, but the 9 is about gain or attainment, but we have an increase here, right? So for some people, if this message resonates with you, it's about upping your game or moving things to the next level. With that in mind, this card can also represent either training or instruction, some kind of teaching, and I'm going with the idea that she has the falcon on her arm. So for me, that is a symbol of training, teaching, and instruction. So there is that. Now, for some people, this could be about, if this is about multitasking and juggling a lot, then the message of the 9 of Pentacles is about downtime, leisure time. Well-deserved downtime, well-deserved leisure time, right? So it could be like, how can you figure leisure time or downtime into your week this week, but especially maybe consider something on Tuesday, because that is the day that this card is falling in. So again, this is about gain or attainment on a material level. It can represent teaching, training, instruction. It can represent financial self-sufficiency or independence. It could also represent successful self-employment, like I said. But with that, there may be some training with that to make your business more successful. And that would make sense coming on the heels of this card. Remember, I said this is about internship. This could be also about a course of study. So that makes sense with those. But again, also too about downtime, leisure time. Okay, so now we're moving from Monday, Tuesday. We're here at Wednesday. And here we have the Hermit. So this is a major arcana. And when a major comes up for me, I kind of give it a little more attention because it's from the major arcana. So now the Hermit is a card that talks about one of the things that I talked about in my intro, meditation. So this card can be about wisdom gained through experience. And notice that we have 2 9s repeating after each other. So we have the 9 repeated. The 9 as a number can represent gain, like I said, gain or attainment, but it's also a number that talks about lessons learned or a need to wrap something up, right? So it could be like, especially on Wednesday. Wednesday may prove to be an important day in terms of maybe learning a significant lesson, maybe one tied to either your spiritual growth and development or maybe your psychological growth and development, okay? So there's that. Now on Wednesday, it could be a matter of also seeking some kind of counsel or guidance, because those are attributes of the Hermit. The hermit is a person who leads by example. So what does that mean? It means that he's shining his light from the mountaintop, which means that he's reached a peak or a pinnacle in his journey through life, yes, and he is now wanting to offer how he did it to other people. So he's shining his light and saying, you could come this way like I did, but he doesn't suggest that you need to, you should do, you ought to do. He doesn't kind of impose his view or his experience on anyone to follow, right? That's what I mean by leading by example or following his example, right? But again, this card can represent a depth of experience. So this could either be you moving into a situation in which you have the experience either behind you or underneath you to support you as you're moving to your next thing, or you're being somehow acknowledged. Remember I said being at the peak, so maybe you're being acknowledged for the experience that you have, or maybe the wisdom that you have, or the counsel that you are able to give to other people, going with the hermit being a counselor. So there is that. Spiritually speaking, like I said, this card can be about meditation. So if you're like me and you're getting back into the swing of a meditation practice, this bodes well. It's saying that, continue with that. And so I'm going to take that as personal advice for myself. Because like I said, I got back into meditation and I'm really enjoying the experience. It makes me aware of how much I missed meditation and how much I actually need meditation, right? So I'm very grateful for that. Now, for some other people, because he's holding a lantern, it could represent gaining some kind of clarity about something, some illumination about something, some enlightenment about something, yeah? So there is that also too. So keeping an open mind for any kind of insight, maybe a download, some kind of wisdom, coming into your sphere, right? That would benefit you greatly. So there's that. And then the last thing is that the hermit can also be about burning the midnight oil. Yeah, I talked about here with the multitasking and the juggling. This literally could be someone who's juggling 2 jobs, because this card can represent 2 different sources of income. Yeah, so if you're not self-employed and you're punching a clock, then this could be that you are working in 2 different places and drawing 2 sources of income. And so I can relate to that because I work 2 jobs, so that applies to me. And in this particular case, going with that, one of the jobs could be you work at night and you're burning the midnight oil. Yeah, so that can be a literal thing as well. It could also be that there may be something about your own spiritual practice. Remember, the major arcana cards can represent spiritual influences, right? Or lessons or principles tied to your spiritual growth and development. Then this card could suggest that there's some activity you could be engaging in at night during the midnight hours, so to speak, yeah? Early morning hours. So that's what I want to say about the hermit. Again, its chief meaning for me is about wisdom gained through experience. Okay, so now let's move on to Thursday. And here we have the moon. Okay, so now another major arcana card, and I'm noticing a pattern because here we have between the hermit and the moon, we have the hermit is number 9 and then the moon is number 18. If you add 1 plus 8, you get 9 as a reduction, right? So we have the 9 repeating 3 times here. So there's something about gain or attainment, lessons being learned, wrapping things up. Now, with the moon is a card that can turn up to suggest being led or guided by your intuition, right? So for those of you who maybe are working on your intuitive development or your psychic development, this bodes very well because it can represent delving more deeply into that. Now, with the hermit and this card, for those of you who are dream people, and what I mean by that is that you are active when it comes to your ability to remember your dreams, dream recall, and work with your dreams. When I get this as a combination, the moon represents dreams, and then the hermit represents taking time to work with a significant dream. So if you're a dreamer, you may have a significant dream and one that may offer some much needed guidance or counsel to help you move through a particular waking life situation or experience. Yeah. So now the moon, if that doesn't apply, the moon can also talk about things that are confusing or things that look uncertain, because again we have something that takes place at night. And it could also represent people who are dealing with maybe some kind of fear or even some kind of phobia, and that may be, coming back to the Hermit, we're seeking some guidance, some counsel, some advice on how to move through that or how to work with that. And then the other thing here, I'm going to get a little woo-woo here. The moon can be a card going along with intuition and psychic ability or psychic awareness. It's also a card of mediumship. And then here, the Hermit could be either an older figure in spirit that we are having some communication with. These two cards can represent spirit communication in that regard, or that somebody is connecting with a guide, because the Hermit can also represent a spirit guide. Now, it could also be, if this is about mediumship, let's say, then this would make sense with all these other cards that came before it about, studying and learning, gaining some wisdom, some advice, or maybe gaining a sense of greater experience, right? This could be working closely with a mentor in that regard, or even that people are working within what's called a development circle, and you're learning how to work with your own particular mediumship skills in that regard. So again, the moon can represent being led and guided by your intuition. That's its chief meaning. It could represent trusting your instincts, with the dog and the wolf on the card. That's another way of saying, going with your intuition. For some people, there could also be something having to do with mothers, issues with their mothers. That's what the moon card can represent for me, and maybe working that out with all the other cards that are coming before it. And then the moon, going along with intuition, psychic awareness, like I've already said, can represent heightened sensitivity. So with that in mind, be mindful on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday about people triggering you because of your sensitivity. Yeah? That is one of the things I always caution people around with the moon. And so there may be a little bit of a need for balance here, or dealing with some sort of duality or polarity or even conflict, because the Hermit card for me is assigned astrologically Virgo, and then the moon is Pisces. So there may be something of a Virgo influence for some people on Wednesday, and a Piscean influence on Thursday, or these cards are polar opposites, and so there may be something again having to do with duality or polarity, and maybe coming into balance. Right? So that's what I want to say about Thursday and the moon. So let's go on to the card for Friday. And here we have the King of Wands. Okay, so now here we have the first court card. So the King of Wands for me is Leo. That's the sign that I have for it, or I have assigned for it. So this could be dealing with a Leo person, or if it's not Leo specifically, and it may be some other fire sign. For me, when the King of Wands comes up, it can represent either power, control, or some kind of mastery. So that could be mastering something in your mundane life. Again, because it's a minor arcana card, or it's about, empowerment, self-empowerment, or self-mastery, right? And that would be like you're gaining a greater sense of authority over some area of your life, yeah? So now the King of Wands in particular, for me, he represents the business world or the working world, because the suit of wands, for me, can represent work, business, enterprise, endeavors, things like that. And that would come back to these two cards here, possibly for, again, somebody who is in business for themselves. This card would be maybe a boss, a supervisor, manager, or leader. So on Friday, there may be, for some people, an issue where a boss, supervisor, leader comes up that you need to handle. Wands is also the suit about action, so maybe something that needs to be handled. Now I also, and this may be more of a general thing, I tend to look at the King of Wands as a diplomat. So it could be like when you're dealing with people, your interactions with people, it's important about being diplomatic with your words, yeah? So there may be some need for quote-unquote diplomacy on Friday, and that would be more in the maybe public circles, social circles, because the suit of wands for me can also represent things dealing with the public and things of a social nature. So I'm looking to see what else I want to say about that. The only other thing I would say is that he is looking this way, so it could be looking at the moon card, especially because it's a card that's closest to him. So again, this may be somebody who is being encouraged once again to be led and guided by his or her intuition, right? Or taking action on something that has to do with a fear, whether that's conscious or subconscious, right? The moon might suggest maybe more subconscious, or some kind of phobia, or getting something under a greater sense of control, because he's closest to the wolf in the image, and that would be like taming the wild side, right? Or taming something wild, you know, domesticating something. Now, what I'm seeing here is that he's on a platform, so this could be, you know, somebody who may be a public figure and has a platform, right? Going with the idea of diplomacy and words. So there may be something centering on confusion or uncertainty, regarding somebody with a platform. And if I mirror the cards, the Hermit and this card, it may be somebody who's older, because the Hermit in historical tarot packs can represent somebody who's older, right? So there may be some concern, some uncertainty about an older person, and this could be somebody who's either in business or in the public sphere, again, that being a public figure, public authority, something of that. Maybe somebody who has a social media platform or following, yeah. But that's what I'm seeing. And then the last thing I will say, and this is, again, maybe somebody who's moving into something that they are excited about, which is good. The King of Wands would suggest somebody who is either passionate about it or devoted to it. So that's what I would say about the King of Wands for Friday. So now coming into the weekend, we have the card for Saturday. And here we have the Four of Cups. So on Saturday, Saturday could be a potentially emotional day, because the suit of cups is associated with water, and it rules relationships and how we relate to other people. So feelings, emotions, and our ability to relate to other people. Now, the Four of Cups is a card that can talk about, you know, I call it the divine discontent card. So it can be about, you know, a sense of boredom, you know, being stuck in a rut, or feeling like I'm stuck in a rut, because it appears like things are the same old, same old. So it could just be maybe a situation that's coming on the scene that makes you feel like it's just the same old, same old. It doesn't really change, you know, which could, you know, suggest that maybe there's a greater need for variety in your life, right? So there's that. But I call this the divine discontent card. Now he's sitting under a tree. So with cups being assigned water, and water is a symbol, an element of spiritual life besides emotional life, then this could be a card that, again, like the Hermit, suggesting meditation, because he's sitting under a tree, right? So it could also be too that this card is carrying the message about being preoccupied with something, because he's looking at the Three Cups here. So that could be preoccupation and distraction, and that something may be offered, but you're so wrapped up in another situation or another experience that you don't notice this. This card can represent overlooking things or not noticing things. So it can also be about a need to pay attention, right? Now, one of my own personal meanings for this card is about getting the help or assistance from our angels. So if you are an angel person, this could suggest to you, consider the possibility of reaching out to your angels, asking for either some help, support, right? Some counsel even maybe on a situation, right? And the interesting thing about the Hermit here is that the Hermit being on top of the mountain represents I'm asking to see my situation from a higher perspective, right? Which is my belief about what angels offer us in terms of either inspired thought, inspiration, ideas. They come from a higher perspective, yeah? So it could just be a matter of you asking for the help and support of your angels. But here's the thing. Once you do that, then you're being put on notice to not miss the signs, right? So that's what I want to offer with the Four of Cups. Again, this card can be about discontent, boredom, feeling like you're in a rut, same old, but also to, getting the help and support from your angels, but also to not being so preoccupied that you overlook or don't notice the help when it arrives, right? It's one of those things like something that's literally under your nose, but for some reason you don't see it or you don't notice it, right? So that's what I would offer with the Four of Cups. And then the last card, Sunday, is the Queen of Cups. So I love the shift here. We started with the physical, right? And then we went more into the internal with the trump cards or the major arcana cards. And now we're moving more into the emotions, the feelings. So we're going from the outside in. Yeah? Okay. So now the Queen of Cups for me, just like this is Leo, the Queen of Cups is Cancer. So this could be dealing with a person who is Cancer, Cancerian, or dealing with somebody who is like mom. So this card, for me, out of all the queens in the tarot deck, she's the most domesticated. So again, this could be literal, something having to do with mom, and that brings the moon back in here. Remember, I mentioned that earlier with the moon. So we have another thing here, possibly a mother issue or an issue with a maternal figure or something even having to do with mothering in and of itself, right? Motherhood. So there is that. And along with the Queen of Cups and the Moon, there's a combination or a connection between them besides the mother issue or the mother angle. These two cards can also talk about your intuition. And the Queen of Cups would be having a great deal of empathy, right? So there may be a situation in which you're being called on for your empathetic quality or ability. But here's the rub. Being mindful of not allowing the situations or feelings of other people to kind of wash over you and overwhelm you, right? And so that's usually the rub with an empath. I'm not an empath, but this is what I understand about people who are empaths, is that sometimes they could feel like they're being overwhelmed with the feelings and situations of other people and needing to kind of like learning how to navigate that and knowing where your feelings and emotions stop and somebody else's start, kind of thing. So it's a matter of maybe this is the time where you kind of have to work with the tools in your toolkit. And then here over on this side, since the Queen of Wands is, or Queen of Cups, excuse me, is on the other side of the Eight of Pentacles, then this could be about grounding, right? One of the things that could be helpful for empaths is about grounding techniques. So, grounding may be in a very important thing, and that would be like striking a balance between the outer world, your physical world, and your inner world, right? Your feelings, your emotions, things like that. So striking a balance between the two, right? And notice here that there's a wave of water behind the juggler, right? So that's, getting swept up in things on an emotional level, right? Or emotional turbulence, if you will, kind of thing, right? So that's one aspect of the Queen, mother, working with your feelings, your emotions, your intuition. The other thing here might be like where I talked about spirit guides appear with the Hermit. Then this is a card that would talk about, working with either marine life or beings or entities that are associated with water. Like I believe in the image here, we have a mermaid here that's etched into her throne. So this could be like people who work with, I want to say it's either undines or undines, sylphs, mermaids, you know, that kind of thing. So if that kind of floats your boat, no pun intended, then you're being encouraged to work with those type of energies, just like I talked about angels here. That would be a different kind of frequency, vibration, energy, yeah. But again, I'm going to go with, you know, this is the idea of like really being in touch with your feelings, really being in touch with your intuition, being led and guided by that. And then again, for the person who may be working on their intuitive growth and development or their psychic ability, this bodes well, this combo. But it could also be, you know, dealing with things that are close to home, because Cancer is the sign that rules home and family, right? And then the last thing is sticking with the Cancer, you know, be mindful of your feelings. If I come back here, remember I said heightened sensitivity and possibly being triggered, then this card would be, you know, just be mindful of, you know, when you're feeling crabby and maybe needing to kind of separate yourself from other people, right? So on that note, I will go ahead and wrap up this week's Oracle Outlook video reading here. If you made it to this point in the video with me, thank you so much for giving me the gift of your time. As I always say, I never take that lightly. And as I wrap up, I want to say thank you again to those of you who watched last week's video. I hope that you circled back to this one, and if you did, that you found it just as informative as you did last week's. And also too, thank you for subscribing to the channel, or you new subscribers. I appreciate you so much for that. And as I wrap up, I also want to remind you again of when I get to the milestone of 5,000 subscribers, I will be doing a live. I still got to learn how to do that, so this gives me a little bit of time to navigate that, but I am so excited about the idea of joining with you in real time. So just be on the lookout for that. I will, as we get closer to that milestone, I will let you all know where I am in that process. So again, thank you for the likes. Thank you for the subscribes. I'm signing out. I'm hoping that you have a great week. And until we see each other in the next video, take care.